Hello, I was watching Dante's video the other day about shuttered lanterns and thought, I wonder, building this temple sort of thing on a map, and I wondered if I could get an effect of stained glass windows out on the shining out on the terrain. So I had a little play around and came out with this effect. It's still a bit work in progress, but it works quite well. I thought it might be worth just highlighting how I got that so other people can play and see if you can improve on it. So relatively simple to start with. Let's grab a quick lamp. And switch the shadow off and switch it on and give it a radius of 1 for now. And I'll just turn down the light so that we can see some of that effect. And grab a window. Now the idea here is, I'll zoom in a bit, this is the inside down here, that's the outside up there. So the first thing we're going to do is make our window a light source and give it a radius of 1. You can do higher. And now see the first snag is that obviously the light source is going up both sides. And if I grab that lantern, make it smaller, it's got to be smaller anyway, and bring it down, you start seeing the light sources clash, which happens. So the first thing we need to do is just get a barrier and run a barrier roughly halfway across a window. That cuts that off quite nicely. And then we can just move that out of the way for now. Move to the top. Now we come to the lamps. So you take your lamp, make it as small as you can see. And now, once again, if we bring this down here, that is going to block any light coming from it. I'm just going to move that to the bottom. It's blocking any light coming from it, so all our light's going that way. So now we can make it a pretty colour. And move that up. We can cover up our light. You do get a little bit of light bleed across the window itself. I'll show you in a second how we can adjust some of that. So one of the things you can do now is, we've got our sort of light there, we can stick a barrier in there. And start funneling where the light is actually going. Let's just chuck another barrier in here. Something I should have done on the first one is not put the barrier right the way down to our initial barrier. And you can change the size of the barriers just by going to the context wheel and then adjust barrier points. What we want to do is bring that. And the idea here is I want the light to bleed across this bottom just in front of the lower barrier. The reason being, duplicate this light and put it there. And I'll duplicate it again and put it there. And let's Let's play with the colours here. Blue in the middle, like green. Now what happens is obviously along this lower section these lights are now mixing, and if you've got a lot of them you'll actually end up with white along there, which doesn't look quite so odd. And now all we have to do is move him up. You see, we've moved it up a bit too far. Bring you back a bit. There is a cut-off point on objects where it seems if you hit it right, the light doesn't go through. As I say, with the little lights, if you make them as small as you possibly can. The other thing to do, I'm just going to take a duplicate of that light, put him over here out of the way. Because lights tend to, dynamic lighting can be a bit of a drain on your system resources. Take your lights and group them to another light somewhere that you can access easily. If you do that, bring up now. If you do that, I only have to select that light and I can use that light to switch the effect on and off. You can do a similar effect with a square lamp. And the trick here is to, I'll find it. If I pick this lantern, firstly, give the lantern a light radius of 1. Turn off shadows. That's so the top of the lantern is lit up, otherwise you'd end up with a black box. It wouldn't look very nice. Then go to barriers and put a barrier around the entire light. Now make sure you set the light up first, light source up first. Otherwise, when you switch this thing on and off, the barrier will actually light up, which you don't want because it spoils it. Once again, just group that. And now, if I just move that window out of the way, we can see a reasonably good effect. Well, would have helped if I'd have grouped it. Try that again. Group. Okay. That's better. This one you have to be a little bit more delicate with. Once again, the downside of this, doing it this way, is I'm just going to move that blocker out. The downside of doing it this way is you do have not a lot of tolerance, and you end up with a little light showing around the sides, but more or less you get the same effect. Just trying to find that threshold where the light is still visible and shining in the direction you want and doing what you want with a different colour. And that is it. Thank you very much for watching.